Fantasy football's waiver wire can be a gold mine. It can also be very frustrating if you don't get who you want. But have no fear. We know that roster building doesn't just end Wednesday morning. It's a week-long process, and we are here to help. Let's take a look at the players who are the most dropped in fantasy to see if we can find a little bit of value and get a rebound off of the waiver wire. Fantasy Football Waiver Wire Rebound is what we call this. Taking a look at the players that were the most dropped in fantasy football and who are still the most available. Let's start with the most dropped. This, of course, according to Yahoo. And there's actually, we haven't really had this before. There's a couple quarterbacks that I'm interested in at this moment. First, it's J.J. McCarthy, Minnesota Vikings quarterback, the most dropped QB in Yahoo in this waiver wire period. Don't love him for this week. It's a tough matchup against the Green Bay Packers. And then you have Seattle after that. So it's a couple of tough ones. This is a bit more of a future play here. After that, he has Washington, Dallas, the Giants, and the Detroit Lions to close out the season. So I don't think he's a bad stash if you want to have someone big for the fantasy playoffs, because I think he could kind of end the season here really strong. And Minnesota is going to need to win a lot of those games if they are going to be successful and make their way into the postseason. The other player that I'm interested in, he's actually the second most dropped QB. Swig of water from an Undertaker cup for dramatic effect. And because I'm thirsty. Joe Flacco, second most dropped QB. Facing the Patriots, you can pass on this team a little bit. They are, from a fantasy standpoint, they're a pretty good defense when you look at the numbers. But if you take a bit of a deeper dive into it, let's take a look. Let's dive in. Let's see what this team has faced, and we will kind of understand where some of those numbers are coming from and maybe why I don't think it is as difficult of a matchup this week for one Joe Flacco. So yes, they are, I think I saw 18th, 19th in terms of fantasy points given up to quarterbacks. Well, they faced Justin Fields this week, so you're not going to give up a whole lot there. Baker Mayfield got to them for a pretty good game, even in a loss. Michael Penix Jr. didn't put up a ton of yards, but 3 touchdown passes. After that, played the Browns, the Titans, and the Saints. So not a whole lot of fantasy goodness there. The Bills, Josh Allen can do his thing. But then Bryce Young and the Panthers, the Steelers, who I'm a little wishy-washy on, the Dolphins, and the Raiders. So it's not exactly a Hall of Fame list of quarterbacks that this New England defense has faced so far this year, which means I think Joe Flacco actually has some pretty good fantasy value here this week. Obviously, no Jamar Chase, so that becomes a bit of a problem. But I think that Flacco can still be a productive quarterback for you if you are in need of a victory here this week. We have It's Okay to Laugh -1 in the YouTube chat. Given the injuries, who to handcuff for Javonte Williams, we will get into that in just a little bit. Okay to Laugh. We'll want to dive into that one a little bit more in depth. We'll finish up here with the rebound, so if you can hang tight, we will get to that question in just a moment. Let's go now to the wide receivers. The second most dropped receiver on Yahoo this week was Parker Washington with Jacksonville. Only 2 targets last week. That was a weird blowout, and they ran the football really well. Coming down the stretch here, Jacksonville has the Colts twice, they have the Titans, and they have the Jets left on their schedule. So Parker Washington could be in for some decent games. I understand they brought in Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr., maybe, who knows who's back when. But Parker Washington, I think, is going to have still a little bit of fantasy value for teams. So I think there is an opportunity for you to go out and check out if your league was one of the ones that he was dropped in. Next up, we have Quentin Johnston, 4th most dropped receiver in Yahoo. And I should say, still 78% rostered, but give it a look in your league. Chargers on a bye, very unimpressive last week against Jacksonville. So maybe the owner in your league was just fed up and dropped him. I think that there are some great matchups for him down the stretch. There's some gold in them there, Hills. You look at the rest of the way. Coming out of the bye, they have the Raiders, and they also have the Cowboys in the fantasy playoffs. So some pretty good matchups for Los Angeles. Obviously, the offensive line is a concern, but I think Quentin Johnston has a chance to get his. And then dropping down a little bit further than we normally do on the list, but wanted to talk about this guy, Rashid Shaheed with Seattle, 6th most dropped wide receiver in Yahoo. Again, 72% rostered, but so take a look. He's getting on the same page as Sam Darnold, and it could take a little bit of time, but they have a great matchup against Tennessee this week, and that should give you the time that you need to maybe get him back on track. So I think there is a very real option here with a guy who is just a phenomenal deep threat and is also someone who I think fits with what this offense wants to do when you look at the deep shots that they are taking and everything like that. Up next, we have running backs. Kamani Vidal was the 4th most dropped running back in Yahoo. Again, tough loss. This is still, I think, again, the offensive line having some problems, but Kamani Vidal is, I think, still the number 1 there with the Chargers. And I still like a lot of what this team could potentially do, even though there is a bit of an injury concern there. I think he'll be back. I think he'll be fine. So I do want to, I would like to take a look at that and maybe take advantage of some people getting a little bit frustrated with that situation. At tight end, we have a couple. First, the 2nd most dropped tight end of the week was Cade Otton. Bit of a down game against Buffalo, but still had 5 targets, and I think is still a solid option if you need help at tight end. And then Colston Loveland, the 4th most dropped tight end. Great matchup with Pittsburgh. He is the number 2, or was at least the number 2 behind Komet last week. Still had 4 targets. This one a bit more of a desperation play for us, but still 4th most dropped, so he could be available, certainly could be available in your league if you are in need of the help, because I think there's a pretty talented kid there, and I think that offense has some decent matchups, I guess, the rest of the way anyway, even if it can be a little bit unpredictable at times, we will say. And then on defense, it is the Atlanta Falcons, the 4th most dropped defense in Yahoo this week. Great matchup with the Saints. And then after that, it's the Jets. So it's a defense you can feel all right about. A couple of very good matchups over the next couple of weeks. So this wouldn't just be a 1-week thing. You can trust that this guy, or that this defense, is going to be there for you for the next couple of weeks. Any others that might be jumping out to you of guys who could be available, let me know in the chat or in the comments if you're watching this after the fact. And hey, do me a favor, share this video with some of your mates. Maybe not in your league, because we want to keep it a secret, but some people who you know who play fantasy football who aren't in leagues that we're in. Give them this and help grow this channel, because really looking to do this as, I guess, full-time content creator here on YouTube, Twitch, and on Kick as well. Let's take a look now at the players who are the most available still coming out of the waiver wire period. Going to use the same, I guess, criteria that we use for waiver wires on Tuesday. 35% rostered or fewer in fantasy leagues. And a quarterback, it's Bryce Young. It's an if you're desperate move, but a pretty good matchup against the 49ers. And like 400 yards last week. He's had some pretty good weeks, and against some decent defenses too. It's not just a matchup dependent thing, although the matchup here certainly helps. So he would be the quarterback that I would be looking at if we missed out on our targets in the waiver wire period. At wide receiver, Tez Johnson, 33% rostered. Tough to only get 1 point out of that wild game. Still had 6 opportunities with 3 targets and 3 carries, and still has that big play potential. If you need something big, he could be your guy. Xavier Legette was another one that we targeted in waiver wires. But I do want to highlight Jaden Higgins, who was the one that we looked at in the waiver wire period. His rostered percentage on Yahoo only went up 1%. I like this guy. Only 18% rostered for the Texans. It's not the most difficult matchup in the world against Buffalo. At some point, you would like CJ Stroud to come back, probably Davis Mills on Thursday. But he's had 7 targets in 3 of the last 4 weeks, touchdowns in 2 of those games. So I think even after a bit of a disappointment against the Titans, Higgins can still be someone that can help out your roster the rest of the way. At running back, most of the running backs that we targeted in the waiver wire were still available, but the one that really wanted to look at was Bam Knight with Arizona. 18% rostered. Again, the backfield is a mess there, but even with different guys coming in, he has had 9 or more opportunities in 5 of the 6 games he has played this season, and now he's getting some more looks in tight at the goal line. Benson's clock has been started to come back. They have 3 weeks to make a decision on him, but DeMarcado is out already this week for the Arizona Cardinals. So I think a pretty good option there for Bam Knight to come in and do some work for Arizona. And then on a bye, but Chris Rodriguez with Washington, 15% rostered. He was the top guy last week for the Commanders. They have a tough matchup against Denver coming out of the bye, but then it's either neutral or good the rest of the way. So Rodriguez, I think, could be one of those guys who could be a very productive member of some fantasy football playoff teams en route to a potential championship. At tight end, there wasn't a whole lot there, which is, I think, an evergreen statement for the entirety of the position. But I still think there could be something with Mason Taylor, 20% rostered. Tough matchups with Baltimore and Atlanta. Both of them are in the bottom 10 for giving up points to tight ends. But Tyrod Taylor should help out this offense and just raise all ships out there. And then you close the year with 3 of the 9 defenses that have given up the most points to tight ends this season. So I think Taylor has a pretty good opportunity to help you out again down the stretch. And then 2 defenses that we are looking at. The one that we brought up in the waiver wire portion actually became more available. It's the Indianapolis Colts at 32% rostered. I didn't think, again, that I would be giving out a team facing Patrick Mahomes, but that offense just hasn't impressed, and they haven't looked scary, and this Colts defense can be pretty good. So I think that is one that you can trust. And then, in what will be the only time I suggest this season, I think you can go with the Raiders at 18% rostered against Cleveland. If you were here pre-live show on the stream, I did the segment on Shedeur Sanders. If not, that's going to be available on YouTube here in just a little bit. The kid's not ready to be a starter. And I talked about why that shouldn't surprise people, but he's not ready to be a starter. This Raiders defense isn't good, but having your first career NFL start with staring down the barrel of a Max Crosby, it's not a fun way to do it. So I think there's an opportunity for the Raiders defense to come up with a couple of big plays here this week. So those are some of the options that I would look at if we didn't get who we wanted in the waiver wire period. If we're looking for a rebound, these are the ones that you can certainly attack that with. In the chat, Toxic, has PK talked about the Grey Cup yet? Just so I can leave and come back after he's done talking about it. That'll come up in a little bit, Toxic. We haven't fully gotten to that one yet. Although, again, after the jokes that were made earlier, I think the Riders might be number 1 in a power rankings. Just going to say. Yeah, more fantasy football talk to come here in just a second as well. So make sure you get your questions in. If you're watching live, I'll bounce back to this anytime you want. And we'll finish up what we're talking about at the moment, but then get to whatever questions that you want. So throw those in the live chat or put it in the comments below if you're watching this after. If you're listening in podcast form, just get at me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein.